Lance Reisland makes his weekly visit to Locked On Browns. And does he think it's time for a quarterback change? We'll talk about it, plus a bunch of things from this Lions game coming up next in the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. We have Lance Reisland back on the show for his weekly Tuesday visit. What happened on Joe Flacco's interception? He's going to break it down for us. Plus, how did the Browns defense stifle Jared Goff? And we asked Lance the question on everybody's mind. Is it officially time for a quarterback change for the Browns? First, though, I do want to thank you for being in every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Lance, glad to have you back this week, man. Obviously, another disappointing outcome for the Browns against the Lions this week, and there's a lot wrong on the offensive side of the ball, which is always where I like to start. Just in general, I'm going to pick your brain on some of those things, but I know that one of the big topics this week for sure was the interception that Joe Flacco threw. At least the first one. The second one was kind of a fluky play. It looked like Jerry Jeudy slipped, but the first one in particular, which Joe Flacco took the blame for, I thought was interesting, and I want to break this play down with you so you can sort of describe to everybody what happened on the play and why it led to Flacco throwing an interception.
All right, let's take a look here. So, can you get to it, Spencer?
Yeah, I got you.
There you go. Okay, so go back one for me. All right, so you take a look here. This is the interception, and I'm here to tell you that this is Flacco's fault with the throw, but I'm not sure what Tillman's looking at either. So if you look at Tillman, I have him in the red on the left side of the screen. As the play comes up, you're going to see the Lions are in a too high shell. But the reason I know it's not a cover two look is because of where the linebackers are. There's no one over the centers or guard. They're out in man coverage. Now that tells me because the middle field is open, they're absolutely not going to leave the middle that wide open. So what they're going to do is they're going to run cover one. There's going to be one of the safeties on the left side is going to go deep. The other safety is going to come and almost be at the linebacker position. A lot of people have a lot of different names for it. We used to call it one robber. So it's cover one where everyone underneath is in man coverage. There's going to be one of the safeties will be right at the linebacker depth at about 6 to 8 yards in the middle. He's going to take care of any slants. He's going to take care of any dig routes, all those routes that the Browns love to run. Now, over on the left side where you see Tillman's at, kind of moving on to the next here, you're going to kind of see the routes. You're going to see Tillman in the red. He's going to run a hitch. Now, usually a hitch is usually paired with a fade. So you're not going to run a hitch into a squat corner. And when Flacco threw the ball, the throw was really, really bad. He should never throw it up like that. But I'm not sure why Tillman ran a hitch. And I know Flacco took the blame, but this is Tillman's fault as well. Because if you quarterback thinks you're going deep, they have to be on the same page. And if it's cover two, obviously it would have been a little tighter in that window over there. But Flacco knows because of the alignment, because of where the linebackers are, because of they're looking at the receivers, et cetera, he knows this is cover one robber. So he's not going to work the middle of the field. You'll see the crossing routes. Fannin on the right side is going to be on a slot fade. You also know it's man coverage because Sampson is all the way out on the right, and Jack Campbell walks out with him. Which tells you man coverage because if it was zone, it would be the corner. So all these things kind of tell you it's man coverage. It's some type of man. It could end up being zero with a double blitz. It could end up being a cover two man where there's two safeties deep. This one happens to be one robber. Regardless, Tillman's got to run a fade, and that will at least maybe he can knock the ball down. Now, Flacco, because he was under such pressure all day, he wasn't under great pressure, but I think he started to get a little bit of happy feet and his time was sped up. His clock was sped up. So, again, this is Flacco's fault because he threw an interception. And it's Flacco's fault because he threw the ball up under pressure. But this is also Tillman's fault because I believe Tillman ran the wrong route here. I believe this is a choice route. Yeah. Very simple play, high school, college, pro, where you have a choice. You're going to either run a hitch or a fade. And again, this is kind of the miscommunication the Browns have had a ton of as as they as they're trying to run these plays and if they're trying to do something. So now you see where the football is at. So this is where the safety came from. So you'll see this is kind of like as the play goes along, right? So at the end of the play, you'll see the football ends up here. The safety, Joseph, gets over top. Flacco thinks Tillman's going to be running a fade. He's running a hitch, and it just looks like a complete bust of a play. But in all reality, it comes down to miscommunication by somebody. And I'm not going to blame totally Flacco here because he's getting enough grief. This is on Tillman and Flacco.
So the way I sort of read this play, Lance, and watching it back too, I wondered if Tillman decided to run the hitch because off the line, he didn't really have a good jump on the corner that was guarding him. Like it felt like he kind of got 5, 6, 7 yards downfield and realized, well, shoot, I'm not really beating this guy. He's kind of right with me. So I might as well run the hitch and try to lose him coming back to the ball. Again, we can't speak for him. We don't know what was going through his head, but that was just kind of if you watch the play back, or if people want to watch the play back, it felt like because of where the corner still was on him as he sort of got when you're running the fade, you want to get a good release, get yourself free to the outside and know that you kind of have at least a little bit of room on that guy. And it seemed like because he was still so close to him, he just decided I'm breaking it off and running the hitch. And obviously Flacco, to your point, thought, hey, he's gonna run the fade here and throws it up.
Well, here's my counterpoint to that. And I think, obviously we don't know exactly what's going on, but you're going to see over here at 3 strong on the right side, Fannon's going to be the third receiver in on the right side. And he's going to kind of run that over route. And you run that over route just in case it's zone or man, you got to clear that guy out. So I would assume that he has a mandatory outside release. He has a mandatory fade if he gets press coverage because of the fact you have an over route coming from 3 strong on the other side. So if it's a zone coverage, he would clear out the zone. If it's man coverage, he's going to clear out the man. Obviously, if it was way off, the quarterback would just take the hitch early before Fannin got over there. So for me, all signals this is on Tillman. The route is Tillman's fault and the throw is Flacco's fault.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think that's good insight into how those choice routes and plays kind of work. It is a little bit of responsibility on both guys. And that's where chemistry and the work in the preseason and all that comes into play, because you got to kind of get a feel for what a guy's going to do in certain situations. And clearly in this instance, they weren't on the same page. I know you wanted to get to another couple plays here. The next one I know you had was a miss that they had to David Njoku, who is somebody that you think they need to keep trying to get the ball to it, and especially in space so that he can kind of create for himself.
All right, so let's take a look. So they got a lot. There's been a lot of misses, and you said it, right? So they're dropping the ball, they're pass protection. Flacco's missing some, whatever it may be. But right now, I think as a struggling quarterback, which Flacco is right now, you got to find your guys who can make plays for you on easy throws. And remember, the closer they are to inside, the easier to throw. So this is a play down the red zone where they actually hit Jerry Jeudy on a little whip route here. He comes outside and drives in. Tillman's going to run a corner, so this is a high-low over here in case you get zone on the right side. On the left side, you're going to see Njoku. He's going to actually start off as 2 strong, right? And then as the play goes along here, I'll show you. But on the outside of him, you're going to see there's 12 personnel. Fannon's outside of him. Now, what they end up doing, this is Anzalone, the linebacker who absolutely has to be beaten by Njoku. Njoku doesn't run a great route, but he's got to run a great route, then demand the ball when he comes back to the huddle. So let me make sure I'm right here.
I think that's the next one. You wanted to be on this one.
Yes. Okay. So I apologize. You can, and
You're
actually,
good.
so as you see here, so when you see this motion before plays start, Sampson's going to actually, Judkins is going to actually move outside. Now, when he goes outside, the middle linebacker, 46, the other guy I have in purple, he's going to go outside with him. So that tells everybody man coverage.
Right.
And that tells you man coverage because obviously if it was zone coverage, the guy that was over Fannin would just bump out. But it tells you, and that's why they do those short motions. That's why they do the stuff with the running backs, because if the linebackers follow, then it's man coverage. Move on to the next one, Spence.
I got you. Yep.
So now take a look at, running through the route here. So you're going to get Fannin on the outside, working our way in. You're going to see a little short hitch by Judkins. You're going to see Fannin runs a slot fade. You're going to see Njoku's going to run a kind of a seam route on Anzalone. On the other side, I said you got the smash. They would the quarterback would work to the right if he had a zone coverage. But for me right here, even though he hits Judy, this is a miss on a touchdown route. Why? Because he has press coverage on 3 strong with Anzalone, the linebacker. And Njoku's much too athletic and long for Anzalone in the red zone. So for me, Flacco should be looking to his right to get that free safety who's right over top in his vision. He should look him off to the right and then stick that ball to Njoku to 3 strong. This is the kind of stuff. Now, he's not wrong by hitting Judy. Judy gets tackled, but it's an opportunity. We always talk about those chunk plays that he's missing. And sometimes it's him, sometimes it's protection, sometimes it's a drop. For me, this is an opportunity for a touchdown. As a quarterback, you're looking for a matchup with your best player on offense, which I think still is David Njoku on a linebacker. And David Njoku, as good as Anzalone is, and he's a good player, David Njoku's better. And you can see that's where I think the ball should go. And he, for some reason, works to Judy's side. And I don't know if it's because of protection. I don't know if he misread the safety. We don't know if the safety's eyes were over on Njoku. But for me, I think this should be a shot to the seam on the touchdown. And this is the kind of stuff they're missing.
I think that's a really important point, too, because with the conversation with the quarterbacks right now, obviously, Flacco not being able to hit on those plays and missing some of those reads, I think is part of the reason that it's even a conversation. We'll get to Lance's thoughts on the quarterback situation coming up, but I know you want to get to one more play here, which I believe was the strip sack and kind of what happened on that play to allow Aiden Hutchinson to make the play that essentially put the game out of reach completely and sealed the deal for the Lions.
All right, so the Lions are going to show a 6-man pressure. You're going to see the 2 linebackers inside. 46 is going to be Campbell. 34 is going to be Anzalone. Now, at the snap of the ball, the Browns are in a big-on-big protection. So that means there's 5 offensive linemen, right? Go back one more time for me, Spence.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So there's 5 offensive linemen. There's 4 defensive linemen and 1 linebacker. So the offensive line, they're in charge of the 4 defensive linemen and 1 of the linebackers. Now, they decide in this particular play that the right linebacker, Campbell, is going to be the guy they're in charge of. Okay, go to the next one for me, Spence.
Yep.
So now as the play goes along, you're going to see over on that side, you're going to see Campbell blitz. You're going to see that 3 technique go inside. Now, the Browns do a really nice job of sliding Posick 55 to the right. He's going to pick up the 3 technique. They're going to slide Teller over to the right. He's going to pick up the blitzing backer. Now, what ends up happening, because Anzalone is also showing pressure, right? That means they have to account for him. So regardless if he blitzes or not, Ford has to account for him. So Ford's going to come across the formation because he's assuming Anzalone is blitzing. And he's also assuming it's a 6-man pressure. But in reality, it's just a sim pressure or simulated pressure.
Yeah.
So the defensive tackle to that side is going to loop outside because he has contain. The defensive end is going to drop to hook to curl. And then Anzalone is going to drop the hook, which is the middle of the field. So it ends up being a 4-man pressure with 3 of those guys coming to the right side. Now, what ends up happening, because Ford has to account for Anzalone, right? It gives one-on-one with Lucas on the on Hutchinson.
Yeah.
So it pre-snap, let's go back to the first slide, if you would, Spence. So pre-snap, if you look there, because he's on the right side, he actually, if they don't blitz any linebackers, he wants to work to his right. He's going to chip on Hutchinson and then release. If there's a 4-man pressure, they're going to help. But because they
you're saying Ford would chip?
Ford would chip, yes.
Yeah.
So that's if the linebackers weren't coming. But pre-snap, because it's a big-on-big protection, if those linebackers show, so right now they're making, so you'll see Posick will say, we got Campbell, we're working to the right. So him and Teller are going to be 2 for 2 for the defensive tackle. 77-55 are going to be in charge of those 2 guys. And then Ford is going to be in charge of the other back. But if they don't show blitz, he's going to be on the right side so he can chip on Hutchinson. But since Anzalone shows in that line of scrimmage, there's nothing they can do. So that's a scheme thing, and that's what happens when you scheme it up. If you show 6, the offense has to account for 6, whether they bring him or not. Yeah. And what it ended up doing is that on the left side, Petonio didn't have anybody to block, but on the right side, you had Lucas one-on-one with Hutchinson, which was just a mismatch.
Yeah. This is what you've talked about before. It's just like the overloading. It was only 4 guys that came, but they overloaded the left side, and it almost became like too many guys to account for the players that were left, like specifically Lucas. And it's a creative way to get your best player in Aiden Hutchinson in sort of a one-on-one situation and allow him to make a play like that. So well done by the Lions on that play. And obviously it didn't work in the Browns' favor. We're going to come back to this offensive line, the issues that we've seen there for some of these guys, but we are going to talk defense coming up next as well. Keep it locked in the Locked On Browns podcast. You know the saying, look good, feel good. The problem is that most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. They look sharp, but feel stiff, hot, and high maintenance. And that's why Mizzen in Maine comes into play. Mizzen in Maine makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel comfortable. They actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they've perfected it ever since. Their shirts are stretchy, moisture wicking, wrinkle resistant, and machine washable. No ironing, no dry cleaning. It's the feel of athletic wear, but the look of professional wear, which is my favorite kind of look, if I'm being honest. Right now, Mizzen in Maine is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmaine.com with the promo code LOCKEDONNFL20. That's Mizzen in Maine, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Maine, MAIN.com. Promo code LOCKEDON20 for 20% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen in Maine stores in select states. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season's obviously well underway, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff each week with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There's nothing better than following the NFL season with FanDuel, and frankly, the best part is they have options for however you like to bet. Maybe you're a prop bet person, and you want to bet on a player to eclipse a certain benchmark in a game, or maybe you just want to combine that player's benchmark with a few other props, and maybe even a money line thrown in to build a same game parlay, or you can just jump on a money line in real time as the action unfolds. The options are endless. And honestly, that's what makes betting with FanDuel, whether it's your team playing or not, makes the season even more exciting. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Great stuff with Lance Reisland there in that first segment, going through some of the stuff that went wrong on offense in particular. We want to switch to the defensive side of the ball. And, you know, Lance, I thought it was interesting that the stage for that game last week was kind of set by John Morton, the Lions offensive coordinator, saying that, you know, the Browns hadn't seen a run game quite like the Lions to this point in the season. And listen, I think he had a point to a degree. Because those two backs in Montgomery and Gibbs are two of the best in football. Maybe you could argue the best duo of running backs in the game right now. And Jahmyr Gibbs did have a lot of success against this Browns defense, but I do think in general, only giving up 109 yards, that's pretty respectable, all things considered. What did you think about how the Browns handled those running backs and what they did in the run game specifically in stopping or limiting the damage on the ground for Detroit?
Well, the Lions are a little bit different because they are not only athletic, but they're really, really strong. So they kind of give you the version of Myles Garrett on the offensive line, like Penei Sewell. And what I mean by that is usually when you run inside zone, you're thinking about pushing people backwards, or what we like to say vertical displacement. And then you run wide zone, which is kind of going to be like horizontal displacement. You're trying to move them left to right. What the Lions do is that they run that zone, but they try to do both. They move you backwards and sideways. So they're just really, really strong up front. They're great at double teams. I thought the Browns played really, really well inside. In fact, I think the Browns defense, the front seven, is everything that I thought it would be before the season. And you and I have talked about it a bunch. They just have no help. And what's ended up happening is they're just taking body shots and body shots. So if you look at that score, everybody's like, oh, the defense gave up 34 points. Well, 17 of those came off turnovers. And then you had special teams.
Yeah. Another 7 on special teams. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I think the defense is playing great. I think Mason Graham and Malik Collins, especially Mason Graham, I think he got doubled a couple times. Things he'll learn from. But I thought they fought. I thought they had tons of tackles for loss. They had tons of 3-and-outs. They played really, really well. You cannot play once. You cannot. That's what complementary football is. And there's no offense right now. So the defense is absolutely trying to make plays. And the thing I worry about is that the more the offense struggles, the more these guys are going to press and try to be perfect. They don't have to be perfect. They just need the offense to kind of just be okay. And I also want to say this, the 4 teams they've played are really, really special on offense. They're going to start seeing some teams that are human. They've been playing offenses that are very, very talented and have some really elite players.
Myles Garrett, you mentioned him in your response there as well. First time this season, he didn't register at least some form of a sack. Obviously, he had a half sack last week, but nothing here against the Lions. Some of that, as you said, probably had to do with the matchup. Penei Sewell is one of the best tackles in the game. Myles was lining up across from him a number of times this year. Lions offensive line in general is very good, so that makes things a little tougher. But even without a sack, what did you notice from the way that Myles made his presence felt in this game? Because I not that fans forget that, but I do think sometimes fans get lost in like, where's Myles been? Because he doesn't show up on the stat sheet necessarily with the sacks and things. But we can't forget, Lance, like he is constantly impacting every team's game plan on a weekly basis. So what did you see from Myles in this game?
Well, you just said it best. That was going to be my first comment. So right now, the Vikings are working on Myles Garrett. And that what it means is that the rest of the defensive line, and they played well, but they have to play at an elite level. And those guys are starting to do that. Malik Collins was outstanding this week. Mason Graham had some ups and downs, but he was really good again. And then you have McGuire, who had a sack and played really, really well. What Myles does is he takes he's going to take a route out, so you can't get 5 out because they're always going to chip with him. He's been really, I think this is his best year because he's playing the run so well. And for me, I'm not a big sack guy. I don't think sacks is the most important number. In fact, I think it's the least important number for those defensive line. For me, it's the pressures and the ability to get the quarterback off his spot. And no one does that better than Myles. And if you look at, it seems like Myles in a game is almost getting there and almost getting there. That means he's speeding up the clock of that quarterback, and that's just as important. So all the times that you saw him speed up the quarterback and that was incomplete, that's because that quarterback couldn't wait, and the quarterback knew he couldn't wait. So his impact, you're right, it's not always going to be in the stat sheet, but it's the preparation into the week. It's the hurt quarterback pressures. It's the quarterback knowing. I heard a thing from Joe Burrow, this is a number of times I've heard this, but he knows when Myles Garrett's not getting doubled and he's getting rid of the football. All quarterbacks know when he's not getting doubled. And that, with like what I showed you with the Lions, the Browns do a great job of isolating Myles as well. So he's very impactful. The sacks don't mean anything. It's how many times is he pressuring that quarterback and how is he playing the run, which he's doing an amazing job of.
On the back end of things, obviously the Browns had the one interception in this game. Denzel Ward coming away with it. Back-to-back interceptions now for them. But this Lions offense, I talked about it so much last week. They're a juggernaut. They have so many different weapons, so many different ways they can hurt you. And I thought they made Jared Goff look pretty pedestrian overall. 16 to 27, 59 completion percentage, 168 yards. As bad as Joe Flacco played, he actually had more yards than Jared Goff in this game. I know he had the 2 touchdown passes. There's a lot of context to that, of course. Where the defense was set up on the field based off of turnovers from the offense, all those different things. But Jared Goff, I didn't think played a very good game in this one. What did you notice about what the Browns were sort of showing Jared Goff in coverage that made life difficult for him in this game as well? Because I thought the offense that was I called a juggernaut all week seemed like they obviously had their fair share of struggles in it. I'll be honest, Lance, like there was times throughout this game where it felt like, well, the Lions offense is going to get it together and they're going to kind of pull away. And the defense continued to kind of slam that door and keep the team in it up until that punt return that we talked about. So just what did you notice in the way that they sort of played the pass and limited what Jared Goff was able to do?
Well, the Browns secondary, the thing, whether you like it or not, they're very confident in themselves. And, that's why they don't move Denzel Ward with the best receiver because they think they can all play. Yeah. And Miles Hardman was much better this week. He had a much better week. But they were actually in zone on the interception. They were in a cover 3 look, which is a really good kind of a change up from Schwartz. I think, this is going to sound, kind of amazing to some people, but the reason the offenses look good for the other side is because of the Browns' inept offense. So if you think about it, if the Browns were able to score some points, that's going to put more pressure on Jared Goff to have to make plays down the field in that chunk yardage area, which is going to allow the pass rush to get there. Right now, with no offense, the other offense can be really, really safe because they know the Browns offense is not going to do anything. So you're not going to get any 7-step drops. You're not going to get any 5 receivers out. You're never not going to try to chip on Myles Garrett. Why? Because you're not worried. If you have to punt, you're not worried about the Browns offense. So I think the Browns defense, again, the Browns offense is killing the Browns defense. The Browns special teams are killing the Browns defense. If they play solid in those 2 phases, this defense will be even better. This is the worst this defense can play because the offense is being close to the best because they know the Browns offense can't move the football. So they're going to make them go 80 yards plus, and they just can't do it right now.
Lance, I know that you're rubbing off on me when, you mentioned the interception and the cover 3 look. That was something I picked up watching the playback because I noticed Denzel dropped. He kept dropping, and I was like, Goff didn't see him. He didn't see him falling into that zone, and he gets the interception. So this is why these conversations happen, because I could tell you're rubbing off on me. That's the good news.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing, right? Because you'll never watch. You talk to me too much, you'll never watch a football game again the same way. Because
that's what I want.
Because I'll tell you what, because you're right, because Goff thought he was going to sit on the receiver on the right side, sit on it, and that he would have that whole area to throw. So absolutely, I thought the same thing. I'm like, what a good changeup, because they just haven't been in a lot of zone, and really good changeup. And once again, it tells you the attention to detail Schwartz has. And this defense, if this offense, I don't believe in negativity. This offense is going to get better and better, and then you're going to see how dominant this defense truly is.
You might be the only one who feels that way, Lance, which we'll get to coming up. I also want to just say, as much as I learned from Lance, I hope our listeners learn some things from Lance about how things are sort of unfolding in these games as well. But we will ask him the question on everybody's mind coming up next, which is it time for a quarterback change in Cleveland? That's coming your way here on the Locked On Browns podcast. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, maybe even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. If you're looking for something that is going to set the right tone for you, this is your chance to follow. This is the opportunity for you. That's exactly where Rugiet Go Long comes in. It's not just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for your confidence. The process is simple. They connect you with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day and night and into the next day. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet, rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Make sure to use the code so they know we sent you. All right, Lance. So, before I ask that question that's on everybody's mind, I do want to ask you what you think overall as you assess this offense is the biggest problem right now. And then I think that'll lead nicely into the other question for sure. But what do you think is the biggest issue this offense is experiencing right now?
I'm going to be different than most here, but I think it's the tackles are the biggest issue right now, and pass protection. They're actually run blocking okay. Both those guys do a nice job. Nothing they're doing is a lack of effort. Nothing they're doing is a lack of preparation. They're just unable to get out there and kick step and block some of these guys. And, when Lucas has 17 one-on-ones with Hutchinson, that's a problem for me. And as an NFL, as a coordinator, whether you're in high school, college, or pro, we're all putting in the work. We all kind of understand that you can't let the best players beat you. And that's kind of what's happening right now. So for me, Flacco's part of the problem. Once again, quarterback always gets too much credit, too much blame. But for me, it's pass protection. And then it kind of goes to the inconsistent run game. And then it's drops. Obviously, quarterback play. Not getting it's right now it's plays over players. I'd like to see the Browns get to more players over plays. But yeah, for me, it's the offensive line because it's been so dominant over the years, especially those tackles are really, really struggling pass protection.
It might be a different answer, but I think you're right about this, Lance. Like when those two guys aren't playing well, when they're getting beat constantly, people use the term turnstile all the time. That's not beneficial to the offense in any way. And listen, I know Joe Flacco's playing very poorly in his own right. There's some problems there too. But it's not easy to execute that job, the hardest job in football, when you have guys bearing down you all the time and your internal clock is moving faster because you don't feel like you have confidence in those tackles. I think the offensive line issues are the biggest issue with this offense. But that said, there's plenty of arguments to be made about Flacco. Father Time has kind of caught up with him, I think, at this point. He definitely looks like he's older than he was even 2 years ago in 2023. He just can't make the same plays. You showed us the Njoku miss earlier where, like, he's just not, he's not seeing certain things that he probably did in 2023 and making the throws downfield. With that in mind, in your estimation, is it time to make a change at quarterback and try to just get something else going out there to see what it brings to the offense and if they can have more success?
Well, I'm gonna kind of say it. I'm not gonna give you a yes or no.
By the way, Lance, I want to preface this for everybody. You love Dillon Gabriel too, so them making a change is good news for you because you think Dillon's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I was. I'm all about him. If you go back to our draft stuff, I was. I remember when I Dillon Gabriel, I had some wide open eyes when people looked at me But here's the issue with the quarterback position is. First of all, it's hard to get a jolt of energy or a change of pace with any other position. Can't do it at guard, can't do it at receiver, can't do it anywhere else. So the quarterback position is the position. Now, if you think Joe Flacco is the only issue with this offense, then that's a problem because he's not the only issue. Because when you say like he's not making some of the throws, I agree. But he hit Fannin on a great corner route. He hit Jerry Jeudy on a route. He's made some throws. They have had some drops. Once again, though, he's played poorly. Though, don't get me wrong, I'm not backing him. Now, if you go to Dillon Gabriel, who I love, that maybe it's because the tackle. Maybe you say to Flacco, "We need to get you outside the pocket. We need to get outside the pocket." That's not what you do well, Dillon Gabriel. So if you go with the idea of changing the quarterbacks because you're looking for a change of pace, you can't protect, and you're just looking for a change. If you're going with a quarterback change because you think everything is going to be fixed when Dillon Gabriel goes there. Dillon Gabriel is still going to not have pass protection right now. Dillon Gabriel is still going to have some drops. Dillon Gabriel is still going to have a inconsistent run game that seems to be getting better. So for me, I'm a no. Until those other things get fixed, I think Joe Flacco, and everybody hates he's a veteran. He is a veteran, and that does mean something. And now he's got to start doing some other things well. But you said it best. People are at his feet. And it's so easy to blame the quarterback. Everybody wants the backup. The backup quarterback is the most popular guy in the world in every city. And once again, I'm not on board with making a knee-jerk decision. But that being said, if you're looking for a change, if you need to move the pocket a little bit, if you need to change, help the tackles a little bit, if you need to run the ball, some zones, some boots and stuff that Kevin likes to run, then yeah, maybe you do that. But you do it with the idea of everybody knows that this is not just Joe Flacco. Right. Yeah. This is an offensive thing and everybody's involved and everybody's got their hand in this mess. And we're going to try to see if we can move the pocket a little bit and get a little boost of energy by going with Dillon with the idea that Flacco might be still go back in or even Shador but once again, if you don't pass protect, I don't care who you put back there. They're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, we know Kevin Stefanski on Monday was non-committal overall on what he's going to do at the quarterback position. I would assume on Wednesday we get more of a firm answer. I honestly think right now he doesn't know, Lance, but what I think is interesting is the context around this week, I think comes into play here too. I know we've talked about like putting the quarterback in a good situation. You've also mentioned though, like there's never it's never a perfect situation. I think that's very fair as well. I still do think though, the week you're going to London, this is a rookie who's still kind of getting used to the week-to-week grind of an NFL schedule and what that all looks like. And then you're gonna put him out there with the change in the body clock and all that. I just don't know that that's a good idea. Also, the Browns just made this trade for Cam Robinson from the Texans today, or on Monday, I should say. Maybe you want to give him a week to kind of get himself acclimated and maybe start that next week before you. And maybe that solidifies your offensive line a little bit better before you put Dillon Gabriel out there. So I think there's some circumstances here too that come into play. But I think that's well said by you on kind of the state of things at the quarterback position. I do think a change is coming in the very near future, but I don't know if this week makes the most sense. Lance, we'll get out of here with this. What do you notice as the Browns get ready for this Vikings team? Things that they could take advantage of, things that are going to be challenging. We know they have some issues on the offensive line right now. A lot of guys hurt. What do you notice as you sort of get started scouting that team as the Browns' next opponent?
Well, a couple games in, and I will say this: people probably won't believe this, but as bad as the offensive line for the Browns is playing right now, the Vikings are playing worse.
Yeah.
Their offensive line is really, really poor right now. So this is a game that you first of all you start off with: if we protect the football, we can win this game. Once again, it goes back to, when they beat the Packers. That wasn't a good offensive day either, but they protected the football. So if you could protect the football, this is a game that I think the defensive line and this defense can get you some short fields. This defensive line can create some pressure, maybe a strip sack, maybe an interception, maybe they get a score. But this is an offensive line that's struggling, and this is a quarterback in Carson Wentz who will turn the ball over, especially when he's under pressure. This is a very winnable game. It's really going to come down to protecting the football. That's what I see. I'm not too much on the defensive side of the ball yet, but watching that offensive line, which is what I start with usually, this is an offensive line that will absolutely be dominated by the Browns defensive line.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up the offensive line part of this because it's very true. And I'll say this just in exit here and early on in this week as I've started looking at the Vikings. This feels like one of those games where Myles can make. We always like to talk about like how many wins is Myles Garrett worth. This is one of those games where like he might be able to single-handedly win you the game. He strip sack, maybe he makes a big play on defense that sets you up with a short field, whatever it is. Because you're right, that Vikings offensive line is a mess right now. And as much as they're going to be preparing for Myles Garrett, I don't know if they're going to have a lot of answers. Anyway, another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. Lance as well, always a pleasure having him on. And I hope you guys leave these episodes feeling like you learned something every Tuesday. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And as always, I'd like to remind you to check out the Locked On NFL podcast, wherever you get your podcast, and at the Locked On NFL channel. Or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I'll talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.